How are you called a stake president? Like, what's the story behind how you became stake president?
So for me particularly, I was asked to come for an interview with the visiting authorities who were selecting a new stake president. President Standage was being released at the time. I had served as his counselor for 7 years and then was released. So I had 2 years of a break where I was not involved with the stake presidency and did other things locally. But I was called in as a former member of the stake presidency, I assume, to have an interview with the visiting authorities. So during that interview, they asked me a few questions about myself, my family, and so forth. And they flat out asked me, who do you think could serve as a member of a stake presidency? And so I gave my response. And interestingly, they flipped the script and said, well, what about you? And I immediately felt a little, self-conscious, perhaps a little embarrassed, because I certainly wasn't feeling like I was going to sell myself to this process. I simply said that, I love the Lord and I would do whatever the Lord needs me to do if that's a direction that they felt they needed to go. So I left the meeting and went home and told my wife, I said, listen, I finished my meeting up and I kind of felt a little something like we're going to get called back. She goes, what do you mean? We're going to go for another second interview with them? I said, I'm just telling you, I have a feeling that we're going to need to be ready to go back to the stake center. And she said, well, okay, if that's what you think. I said, so sure enough, I was in the backyard cutting my grass, and she was with me, and we were weeding and doing some things in the yard. And the phone rang, and it was the visiting authorities. Would you please come back and bring your wife with you? So at that point, my wife was thinking, oh my goodness, you may be asked to serve in the stake presidency. We didn't know. And sure enough, we went there and they interviewed her as well. And before you know it, they made it clear that they wanted me to serve as the stake president.
So what are some things you do as stake president that you enjoy most?
The things I enjoy the most are working with people, counseling with individuals, and helping them through some of the struggles they face in life. It's been extremely rewarding to sit with them and feel their spirit and their goodness and try to support them through challenging things. So another enjoyable part of this is visiting the different units and wards and branches throughout the stake during the conferences, which you experienced today, as well as stake conference settings and firesides. So those two things, working with people, individuals, counseling together, as well as with families, and then speaking, I found extremely enjoyable. My style is to enjoy the people I work with, and we often spend time chit-chatting and talking about other things that are going on in our lives before we get down to business, and sometimes after we're done with our business. So in terms of fun, those are things that just come naturally as we associate with one another and enjoy each other's company and spirit. I've certainly had laughs with the youth and at youth activities.
Can you kind of walk us through what you did today?
So our pattern has been, when we have unit conferences, ward or branch conferences, that we arrive about an hour or so before the sacrament meeting starts. We have a preliminary meeting with the members of the bishopric and their clerks. We go over the plan for the day. We make sure we have the sustaining of officers form ready to go. And that, as you may have heard, I made sure that President Brayton, who had that responsibility to read that form today, didn't have any issues with names, because sometimes there are names that are hard and pronounced differently. So we just make sure that in that first meeting that we're set for the day, that the plan is in place, that we have a chance to debrief if there's anything on the minds of the bishopric, so that I can get a sense if there's something I want to include in my remarks to help support what he's doing. Sacrament meeting, we just limit it to the unit leader, the bishop in this case, and myself as speakers. And our purpose in the sacrament meeting is really to bring focus on the Savior. A unit conference is intended to build the faith of its members, and especially build their faith in Jesus Christ. So that was where we were going with our remarks. After that meeting, we had the second hour meetings, and as you saw, and you went with me, came with me, we went to visit with the Relief Society sisters. I've been doing that most recently. My two counselors split up, and one goes with primary and the other's been going with the youth. After that meeting, we have what's called an expanded ward council, where we have all the visiting stake leaders come together with all of their ward counterparts. And so we have a chance to counsel together about how things are going in the ward, the spirit that we felt today. You heard all of that. And I will often offer some instruction or encouragement and testimony. The second half of that expanded ward council, after we're talking together, is to give each of those stake and ward leaders a chance to separate now and go off by themselves and discuss things without the whole group present, just them. And as you saw, we brought in we came into the bishop meeting and brought in the young men's presidency to counsel together, since the bishopric, for all intents and purposes, is functioning as a young men's presidency now. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to go and make some ministering visits and try to visit some folks and encourage them in their homes. And then I'll get to go home. That's what we get. That's what we do.